And so what he says here is that you will know the tree by its fruit, because the good man, essentially, out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil man out of the evil treasure produces evil. Now pause there. We've seen Jesus use the image of treasure a lot in the Gospels. Build up your treasure in heaven, right? For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So you have this image oftentimes of a treasury, right? A kind of deposit. And he uses that image for spiritual wealth, right? For spiritual merit or spiritual treasures. And what's interesting about this is that in both cases, the treasure is located in the heart, right? It's the good treasure of his heart that produces good. Now, in context here, you've probably heard people say, you'll know the tree by its fruit. What fruit specifically, though, in this version of the parable is Jesus focusing on? He's focusing it on our words, what we say. For he says at the end, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So there's a direct connection between our heart and our mouth. So the vices and the virtues in this context that Jesus is using are vicious words or virtuous words, sinning with our mouths, sinning with our tongues. In context, that makes sense, because what's the whole Sermon on the Plain, the second half of it's all been about? Judging others, right? Condemning others, right? Blessing those who curse us, praying for those who persecute us. So all of those things are things that we do with the mouth. And Jesus, notice this, in the Sermon on the Plain, as he's trying to get the disciples to learn what it means to imitate him, notice he doesn't spend the whole sermon talking about the sins of the flesh. That's, not that those aren't important, but he's first talking about the sins of the tongue, right? Because it's out of the mouth that the abundance of the heart speaks. And because in the Sermon on the Mount, he's going after the human heart. He wants to transform the heart. The first thing he has to deal with is transforming our mouths, right? Transforming what we say. And I can't help but, once again, just think about contemporary applications of this in light of our context today, where we have social media, which is basically a gigantic international platform where people can say things to one another, say things to people they don't know, right? Without any kind of the normal repercussions that would follow in human conversation face to face. So what happens is people say things they shouldn't say. They say things rashly. They make judgments rashly. And my own experience of this, as I've kind of entered that world and try to navigate it, is oftentimes I've been very saddened and disheartened by the kinds of things that I see Christians saying in the world of social media, right? Even people who, like Christian leaders that you might have a great respect for, when they are speaking off the cuff in this kind of social media context, reveal judgments and condemnations which are really, at least in my opinion, seem to be at odds with the kind of reserve and discretion that Jesus is calling for in the Sermon on the Mount, not to make rash judgments, not to make condemnation. And it's disturbing, because if Jesus is right, which he always is, and it's out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks, then if Christians are tearing one another to pieces, right, verbally, then where are our hearts, right? Have we really been formed by Jesus' Sermon on the Plain? Are we imitating the Master here as he teaches the disciples to grow in self-knowledge of our sinfulness, and not to run around taking specks out of everyone else's eyes when we still have our own logs to deal with? It's very easy to hate other people's sin with passion, right? It's much more difficult to learn to hate your own sin far more than you hate anyone else's. And that's really what Jesus is trying to teach us to do.